Some fears you can just kind of push aside, right? Some nightmares where you wake up and they fade away. But there are some that just they latch onto you and they don't let go. Welcome to The Walking Dread.
Every time we come together, we take you on a journey, into the macabre. These stories, they feel so real. They could almost be true, but they're just too terrifying to be anything but fiction.
And with us tonight to guide us through the shadows is the amazing Julia, our expert in all things fear and folklore.
Always a pleasure to delve into these unsettling tales with you.
Before we get too far down this dark path, make sure you follow and rate The Walking Dread. It really does help us keep bringing these creepy stories to life. Now, tonight we've got something special. We're going to be looking at a short story called Shadow Wings, and we'll be referencing the Walking Dread Story Guide.pdf as well.
Mm-hmm.
And what we really want to explore with you tonight is how horror can be so effective, not just with those big in-your-face scares, but with this kind of creeping dread that takes something familiar, something comforting even, and twists it into something truly terrifying.
Exactly. And Shadow Wings does this brilliantly by taking a familiar piece of folklore, the Mothman legend, and giving it a really dark and insidious twist. Instead of being this vague omen of disaster, the Mothman becomes a direct and very personal threat to one woman in particular, Liv.
Yeah, and what I found so interesting is how the story starts with Liv being completely skeptical. She dismisses the Mothman as just a local myth, something for tourists and teenagers to get spooked about. Which makes her eventual descent into terror all the more impactful.
I completely agree. And when the Mothman does appear for the first time, it's not that classic image of a hulking red-eyed creature. It's described as this sleek, inky shadow with these unnatural green pulsing eyes. It's so much more subtle and elusive, and in a way that makes it even more unsettling because it's harder to define, harder to grasp.
Right. It's not this big monstrous thing that you can easily picture or understand. And it's not just the description either. Unlike those typical Mothman sightings that are often connected to like bridges or disaster sites. These creatures, they're fixated on Liv's home. It was like this targeted invasion of her personal space, which makes the threat feel incredibly personal and suffocating.
Absolutely. That focus on a single dwelling is crucial to how the story builds that sense of dread. It's like this pressure cooker of fear. And the way the terror escalates, it's not through these big dramatic events, at least not at first. It starts with something as simple as an increasing number of moths, this constant presence that just becomes more and more unsettling over time.
And then there's Liv's sister.
Ray.
At first, her fascination with the moths seems kind of innocent, just a kid being drawn to something strange. But as the story progresses, you start to realize that there's something darker going on. Like she's becoming attuned to this alien presence.
Exactly. The horror here, it's not about jump scares or gore. It's this slow, creeping unease that seeps into every aspect of Liv's life. Even sleep, which should be a time of rest and safety, becomes a battle against shadows. And then there's that sound, that scrabbling inside the walls. It's so effective at creating this visceral sense of violation, like something is burrowing its way into their lives, into the very structure of their home.
And what makes it even more unsettling is that when Liv and her sister go to the doctors, they can't find anything physically wrong with them. There's no medical explanation for what they're experiencing, which makes it all the more terrifying because it suggests that the threat is something psychological, something that's manifesting from within.
And then you have these little accidents that start happening. A chipped mug, a stumble on the stairs. They seem minor on their own, but they're constant, and they just chip away at Liv's sense of safety and control within her own home.
Which leads to that really disturbing moment when Liv starts locking her sister in her room at night. It's not about protecting her from something outside. It's about containing something within the house, this darkness that seems to be emanating from everywhere.
And just when you think things can't get any worse, there's that chilling moment when Liv reads the obituary of a neighbor who died in a seemingly random accident. But she has this realization that the moths aren't just passive observers. Their presence has real-world consequences. And their purpose has shifted from being a warning to something far more active and destructive.
And the sisters' drawings, those early sketches of moths at the windows, they transform into these horrifying images of monstrous figures swarming the house, dragging a limp, broken figure that Liv recognizes all too well.
At this point, the story really becomes about Liv trying to survive this siege on her home. She boards up windows. She tries to destroy the artwork. It's this desperate attempt to reclaim some sense of control in the face of something she doesn't understand and can't fight directly.
And it's during this struggle that Liv has this epiphany that completely reframes the Mothman legend. She realizes the moths are the disaster, their presence, the countdown. They're not a warning of something that might happen. They are the harbingers of destruction. They are the agents of her doom.
It's such a brilliant twist because it takes this familiar piece of folklore and makes it so much more immediate and terrifying. It's not about some potential future disaster. It's about the slow, relentless destruction of Liv's life, a death sentence delivered on fluttering black wings.
And if we look at the Walking Dread story guide, we can see how Shadow Wings really embodies a lot of the key elements of effective horror that you outlined, Julia. It starts with that initial dismissal of the sinister Liv's skepticism towards the Mothman legend, which makes her eventual terror all the more believable.
Right, and then you have her repeated attempts to rationalize or escape the situation, which all fail. The doctors can't help her. The authorities wouldn't believe her. It's this constant reinforcement of her isolation and helplessness, which are so crucial to creating a truly terrifying experience for the reader.
And as those unsettling events pile up, the scrabbling sounds, the accidents, the disturbing drawings, we see darkness really taking hold. Liv tries to fight back, but it feels like a futile effort against this unseen, relentless enemy.
What's so effective here is how the story uses these subtle techniques to create unease. That constant scrabbling sound, it's like this auditory assault that never lets up. It creates this pervasive sense of being watched, of being invaded. And then the visual imagery, the inky shadows, the disturbing drawings, they paint such a vivid and unsettling picture in your mind.
And the story really emphasizes the psychological impact of this slow, inevitable decay. It's not about a quick and painless death. It's about the prolonged torture of this constant gnawing dread that slowly erodes Liv's sanity and her will to resist.
And the ending, it's so unsettling precisely because it's not this big dramatic climax. Liv's fate is left ambiguous. It's implied that she'll become just another forgotten victim of the Mothman, but as we've seen, the story presents a much more complex and insidious force at work.
That final image of the fluttering wings being the architects of her doom, it really stays with you. It makes you think about how some of the most profound horrors are not these big spectacular events, but these quiet, inevitable decays that happen just out of sight.
So for those of you listening, what aspects of this creaking dread do you find most unsettling? Is this slow, insidious form of horror more disturbing to you than those sudden in-your-face scares?
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Are there mobs in our own lives? Those anxieties, those nagging doubts, those small but persistent worries that are slowly chipping away at our peace of mind.
It's a chilling thought for sure. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories that crawl under your skin and stay with you long after you've finished reading them, be sure to follow and rate The Walking Dread. Join us next time for another descent into darkness.
Listen closely. Do you hear that scratching?